Come with us to Boston, Massachusetts, where if you only have 24 hours in the city, this will be the best one-day itinerary where you can see almost everything you would love to see. We'll tell you all about the Freedom Trail, tell you about the stops along the way, show you the best photo ops, the place to get the best lobster roll, and the oldest pub in America. We'll take you to the most beautiful street in Boston and to a place where everybody knows your name. All of that and a lot more in only 24 hours. And any Friends fans here? Let's go.
Welcome to VO's Travel.
Where to go and what to see. With kids.
Okay, Boston, Massachusetts. Boston is a huge city, but we're going to be spending our time in this little peninsula and hanging out in downtown. We'll be in the North End, and we will also be checking out Beacon Hill. Beacon Hill is where our hotel was, and it was the perfect place. We stayed at the Fairmont Copley Plaza at St. James Avenue, and it was just lovely. It's located on the bottom left of the screen there, and right across the street from our hotel was the beautiful Copley Plaza. Beautiful park to hang out in, and then that building right there, the famous Boston Public Library. So it was a great location and easily walkable to many things. The beginning of the hotel was just elegant. It's a 4-star, 3-diamond hotel. It's a beautifully elegant historical hotel, and we actually got a really decent price using a discount travel website, so make sure to check those out. All of the details in the hotel were just perfect, including a couple grand staircases. Make sure you stop by and say hi to Corey, who is the dog that lives inside the hotel. She comes to work every day with one of the workers and goes home at night, so you'll find her in the lobby there. Now on to our itinerary. So we landed in Boston Logan International Airport around 8 p.m. We ordered an Uber and we were to our hotel by about 8:45 p.m. We took about a half hour to get everything situated in our room and then went out for a little walk. We spent about 45 minutes exploring some of the really beautiful buildings around the area and then headed back to the hotel around 10 p.m. and checked out the restaurant, and I had my first bowl of Boston clam chowder. It was delicious. The next morning we got up and around and headed out the door around 8:30 a.m. and took about a 5-minute walk to Jaho, one of the 3 or 4 Jaho coffee shops in Boston. You will definitely want to check them out. I tried their smoked salmon bagel sandwich. It was absolutely amazing, and I also had an iced oatmeal cookie latte. It was good too, but a little on the sweet side. We left Jaho about 9 a.m. and had about a 5 to 10 minute walk to the Boston Public Library. We got there and inside about 9:15 a.m. It is free to enter, and oh my word, this building is breathtaking. The architecture, the sculptures, the room with the green lanterns. I mean, oh my word, you have to check out the Boston Public Library. And when you go there, make sure you check out the courtyard as well. It is equally as beautiful. The sunlight filtering into the courtyard just made our day. It was such a beautiful day when we were there. We walked out of the library about 9:40 a.m. and called for an Uber. From there, we had about a 10 to 15 minute drive to the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. That was a lovely little drive through the city streets, and we arrived a little after 10 for a 10:15 show at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. They start off with a reenactment about everything that happened the day of the Boston Tea Party, and you get a beautiful view of the Boston Harbor as well. And then throwing tea into the harbor, it was just icing on the cake. There is a museum that you're able to go in, but I was not able to film anything. While you're there, make sure you do stop at Abigail's Tea Room, though, where you can sample the 5 teas that they threw overboard. After checking out the gift shop, we left the Boston Tea Party and Ships at about 11:30 and had about a 20-minute walk to the Boston Common Visitor Center. This is where the Freedom Trail starts. If you do one thing in Boston, the Freedom Trail has to be it. It's a 2.5-mile walking path that takes you by 16 historical spots throughout downtown Boston. The Freedom Trail is really easy to follow. It's literally a red brick path that takes you along the entire route. Make sure you go inside the visitor center before starting the Freedom Trail and pick up this $3 brochure. Inside the brochure is a map that will take you to all 16 spots and will tell you a little bit about each stop along the way. You can also pick up a stamp for your National Park passport if you do those as well, and there's lots of other stamps along the route as well. We started the Freedom Trail at precisely noon, and let me tell you about all of the stops along the way. You are already in the first stop, number 1, Boston Common, which is the oldest park in all of America. The second stop is a Massachusetts State House, which was built in 1798 and gilded in 23-karat gold leaf in 1874. The third stop is the Park Street Church, which has the nickname Brimstone Corner, both in reference to the fire and brimstone services and to the gunpowder that was stored in the crypt during the War of 1812. Something else to know, on July 4th, 1829, the song My Country 'Tis of Thee was first sung on these church steps. The fourth stop on the Freedom Trail is the Granary Burying Ground. Here you will find quite a few prominent Bostonians buried. You will find the resting place of all 5 of the Boston Massacre victims, the headstone for Samuel Adams, and also see where Paul Revere is buried. The fifth stop is King's Chapel and Burying Ground. Under orders from King James II in 1686, this became the first Anglican church in America, and in 1785, the first Unitarian church. So far, this is the only ground that we've covered, and it's barely 12:30 p.m. at this point. The sixth stop is the Boston Latin School and the Benjamin Franklin statue. This is a site of the first public school in America, and Benjamin Franklin was one of its first students. Stop number 7 is the old Corner Bookstore. The original building on this site was the home of Anne Hutchinson, who was banished from Massachusetts for her unorthodox religious views. But by the middle 1800s, this was the old Corner Bookstore and a flourishing literary center. Now, unfortunately, it's a Chipotle. The eighth stop on the Freedom Trail is the Old South Meeting House. Built in 1729, this is the second oldest church in Boston. Many of the crucial events that led up to the Revolution took place here, the most famous being the meeting that held over 5,000 people on December 16, 1773, when they were there to protest the tax on tea. Stop number 9 on the Freedom Trail is the Old State House Museum, where we were serenaded by this guy. The Old State House was built in 1713 and is Boston's oldest surviving public building. The Boston Massacre happened right outside its doors in 1770, and in 1776, the Declaration of Independence was read from this balcony. Adjacent to the Old State House, the 10th stop on the Freedom Trail is the Boston Massacre Site, where 5 men were killed in the clash between the colonists and the Redcoats. Okay, we have gone from stops 1 to number 10, and number 11 on the Freedom Trail is Faneuil Hall. Faneuil Hall was an open-air market and a public meeting place. Nearly every war since 1812 have been debated within these walls. When you go inside, they do have a really nice area for the national parks. They have a lot of stamps for your passport book if you do those, and a really nice gift shop as well. So make sure you go inside and check that part out. At this point, my friend and I took a little break for a really cool photo op. You can see Faneuil Hall back there. Across the street and up some stairs, you will find this Boston sign, and it is the coolest photo op in all of Boston, if you ask my opinion. There were a few other people there taking pictures, but we only spent maybe 5 to 10 minutes there, and we got a couple really cute pictures. Just a side note, I've heard Quincy Market pictured right there, which is on the backside of Faneuil Hall, is a really good place to get lunch if you're looking for counter service type food, and like I said, is a market, so you can do a little shopping in there as well. But from our last point, we still hadn't walked too far, and it was just about 12:55 at this point, and we had made lunch reservations at 1 p.m., and we were in the perfect spot for that. Just a 3-minute walk from Faneuil Hall and the Boston photo op was the Union Oyster House, the oldest restaurant in all of America and the best place to get a lobster roll. You do need to make reservations there. Like I said, we had 1 p.m. reservations, and starting the Freedom Trail at noon put us in the perfect spot for a 1 p.m. lunch at the Union Oyster House. They are rated the number 1 place to get a lobster roll in all of Boston, and like I said earlier, I was not disappointed. The lobster roll was $45, came with a pickle, coleslaw, and french fries. I got carrots instead because, you know, french fries. Should have gone with the french fries. But we decided to sit outside. You can sit inside as well, but this outside spot that we sat gave us the cutest view, and we loved people watching. Just a little known fact, that building on the left-hand side is the oldest pub in America. You should check that place out as well. And that little street in between the Bell and Hand Tavern and the Union Oyster House made for the cutest pictures. We finished lunch around 2 p.m. and had about a 5-minute walk until we crossed over until the North End. The North End, oh my word. If you love Italy, this is like Little Italy. The streets are the cutest, the shops are the best, but my friend and I actually had tattoo appointments at 2:30 p.m. with Boston Barber and Tattoo Shop. We finished up there about 4 p.m. and headed out for cannolis. If you're in Boston, you have to get a cannoli. We checked out Mike's, but we definitely settled on Modern, and I think you should too. The Modern Pastry Shop is where it's at. It is the cutest shop. the best cannolis. They have a little area over there for table service. And even if you don't like cannolis, they have dozens and dozens other pastries to choose from. And it was the perfect dessert. I did a build your own cannoli with ricotta filling, dipped in almonds, and that dipped in espresso was the best dessert we could have chosen. We finished up at Modern Pastry around 4:30 p.m., stopped in a couple shops along the way to the next stop on the Freedom Trail, which took us about 15 minutes, to number 12, the Paul Revere House. That's pretty self-explanatory. After that, headed over to Old North Church, which was number 13 on the Freedom Trail. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Yep, that's where the lanterns were hung. By 5 p.m., we had made it to stop 15 on the Freedom Trail, Copp's Hill Burying Ground. Copp's Hill was Boston's largest colonial burying ground, dating from 1659, and is where you will find Edmund Hart, the builder of the USS Constitution, as well as Robert Newman, who hung the lanterns for Paul Revere's ride. This is where my friend and I stopped our Freedom Trail. Up until this point, it was about 1.5 miles. There are 2 other stops, the USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, and number 16, Bunker Hill Monument. But adding those 2 stops added another mile to the walk, and we just didn't really want to spend the time going to those 2 places that were kind of further away. Going as far as we did, like I said earlier, we had crossed over into the north end and ended up into the middle of it, and left us at Copp's Hill about 5:15 p.m., where we did call for an Uber to take us to our next location, Acorn Street. We did have a couple minutes walk to get to Acorn Street, and we were there in the middle of October, and let me tell you, these decorations in Boston were amazing. We got to Acorn Street around 5:30 p.m., and Acorn Street, if you don't know, is the most beautiful street in all of Boston, and it lives up to that hype. It is a residential street, so if you do walk down it, make sure to be just really quiet and respectful, but the pictures you can take on this street are absolutely phenomenal, and I highly suggest you check it out. We only spent about 5 to 10 minutes checking out Acorn Street and taking pictures. It's a tiny little street, so you really don't need much time there before we headed to our next location, where everybody knows your name. By this point, our Uber had taken us from the north end back to Beacon Hill, just to give you a little frame of reference. On the 5-minute walk from Acorn Street to Cheers, we did have to stop at this cute little market and pick up some fresh fruit. It was delicious. There's these little places all over Boston that you just have to stop and check out. You guessed it, Cheers. That's where we stopped for dinner. We got there about 5:45 p.m. and checked it out. It is the coolest, quaintest bar underground. You have to go there. Make sure you check out my other video all about Boston that tells you where exactly you should sit to sit in Norm's spot and how to get your own name tag so everybody does know your name. I also tell you how to get half-price appetizers, and just a note, you are able to have your kids in this bar up until 10 p.m. every night. We finished up Cheers at 6:45 p.m. and then took a stroll to a couple more locations before we turned in for the night. At 7 p.m. we arrived at LA Burdick, and you need to check this gourmet chocolate place out. It smelled delicious. I got a small, dark, hot chocolate to go, and it hit the spot. But really, anything there would be great. After that, we headed over to Central Perk. Got there about 7:25 p.m. Unfortunately, the coffee shop was not open for business yet, but we were able to peek in the window and get a couple cute photo ops outside before we turned into our hotel at 7:40 p.m. and called it a night. What an absolute amazing trip we had, all in 24 hours checking out Boston before we headed over to Salem, Massachusetts the next day. Make sure you check out my video all about Salem and another video all about the Hocus Pocus film locations while we were in Salem. And as always, I hope that you remember to choose joy and take all of the pictures.